All right. Well, welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist Representative Shelly Luther. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I told you before we went live, you were a bright spot in a dark time during the height of lockdowns and during COVID. And I so appreciate everything that you did. And but let's share your story here a little bit for those who don't remember or who weren't somehow, I don't know, where it was, there was nothing else to do except watch the news. But so if you were living under some type of rock and you don't know Representative Luther's story, tell us about what you were doing during lockdowns.
Well, I own a salon in Dallas. I actually still own it. And we shut down for the first month during COVID, like everybody else did. But then we started seeing, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's could stay open. And then we found out liquor stores would be open. One of the biggest things that really bothered me was the dog groomer next door to my shop was open and considered essential. And I'm like, okay, wait a second.
No.
We had one of our hairstylists contact us and say, look, I just haven't eaten in a couple of days because I'm just trying to feed my kids and I just don't know what to do. And so my husband and I, prayed about it, thought about it, and said, you know what, we're just going to open, and didn't think we were going to bother really anyone else and no one would really notice. And, within a week we had news helicopters flying over the salon because I was thrown in jail for opening against a government order.
Wild times in the deep red state of Texas, throwing a hairdresser in jail for opening her salon against emergency orders. I think we all learned so much about the power of edicts. Like I never in my wildest dreams did I believe that could be such just one man edicts that could have that type of power. Now, legally, what ended up happening? Did you actually have to serve time? Like, were you convicted? How did that work?
So it was a contempt of court judgment, and I was arrested and put in in the Dallas Lucera jail for 3 days. I had a 7-day sentence, but the Texas Supreme Court ended up getting me out earlier than my sentence.
Okay. And that was considered to like maybe I'm overcomplicating this, but you had not actually broken a law. So that's the thing that's like so wild to me. You broke what I assumed it was structured legally in Texas, like it was here in New Hampshire, where these were just emergency orders through state of emergency laws, but he had closed down things. Is that correct, or was it some type of public health law?
Well, it's definitely not a law. An ordinance
Right.
is not a law. To me, it's a suggestion,
Yes.
honestly, because only the Texas legislature can actually create laws.
Mhm.
And so I didn't know a lot about that during this time. And actually, I don't even do hair. I own the salon, and a lot of people thought I'm a hairdresser, but I own the salon. But at the time, I didn't know a lot about politics, but I knew that there's no way this could be right. And I knew right from wrong. And so I just stood up against it, not even knowing what my fate would be.
Mm, it's really extraordinary. We saw how few people were willing to stand up and do anything. That was the other part that I found very disappointing. I know how difficult it is to go against the grain and be brave and do the right thing, but it was disheartening how long it took so many people to do that, and to, I don't know, exercise that bravery muscle that you obviously already had. So let's fast forward. This is your first term in office, is that correct?
That's correct. We just did our first session, and we'll be going back to a special session on the 21st.
Okay. And this was not your first run, however, right? And you ran for Texas Senate, is that correct?
I ran for Senate and I ran for House twice. So I actually had to run 3 times to finally get in.
Oh, good for you. Okay, tenacity. And why did you decide to run for office?
Well, it started with just the whole campaign or just the whole salon thing that happened. And a seat opened up in the district where I actually lived, and it was a special seat. So it wasn't just a normal election. And all these people are saying, you should run for that spot. I'm like, I don't even know what they do. Like, I literally wasn't political at all. It's embarrassing to even say that. But once I started, figuring it out, I read the Republican Party platform of Texas, and I was like, wow, I agree with the values that are in this. And so just put my name on the Republican ticket. And I actually won the first part of the election, but I didn't win by enough. And so I lost in the runoff.
Yeah.
And then I ran for the House seat 2 years later. I lost by 17%. And after that, my husband and I decided that, maybe we're not supposed to be in politics. I mean, campaigning is hard. I mean, it is like one of the most difficult things that we've ever done. And it's really hard on your family. But then I actually had a brain aneurysm on April 4th of 2023. And I was in the hospital for 26 days. I was in a coma for 10. I had 8 strokes in 7 days. And I wasn't supposed to live. There were 2 separate hospitals that told my husband I wasn't going to live. And I ended up walking out of that hospital and did months of speech and physical therapy. And that same year in December, I put my name in to run one more time, and I won.
Wow. Well, again, true tenacity. That's okay. I have somewhat of a similar story in that it was COVID that made me want to run for office. I hadn't ever thought about anything like that before. I was just thinking I had to do something. And so I ran and I did win in 2020. And so I was a rep in 2021 and 2022. And then I lost my reelection by 60 something votes total.
No, that's the worst. I'd rather it be a landslide, honestly. That is like, man, if I would have knocked 30 more doors.
I know. And probably it would have been. I got very, very sick the fall before that election. So I really wasn't capable of doing what I had done in 2020. And so certainly that did go. It all ended up being for the best. Honestly, I'm much happier being an activist on the outside and doing this. But so you go in, third time's a charm, and you are in there. You've had your first year. How was your first year? Was it what you expected, or was it not what you expected?
A lot of people ask me that question, and I really didn't know what to expect. I knew that once you're an activist, and you know this, once you're an activist and you become a legislator, you play a different role, even though you have the same values that you had before.
Sure.
You can't just burn the place down at all costs when you're trying to get laws passed, especially when you have to get other people to agree with you in order to get anything moving. And so it was somewhat what I expected as far as a little bit of the games back and forth, a little bit of a little bit of a fraternity party type of thing, and just trying to be bigger, like the bigger person in it. But I really feel like we had a pretty successful first session. And for a freshman to pass, a major Republican priority is a big deal in Texas because we represent over 30 million people. And for a freshman to go in and be able to pass some pretty substantial legislation, we thought was pretty big.
So let's talk about it. Going into the session, what were your top priorities?
Well, just the Republican platform. I went in saying, because we had this, it's great. The Republican Party puts together like a item by item list of what they expect. And so I'm a former teacher of 13 years. So I'm like, you give me a list, like give me till, 4:30, I'll take care of that. But you can't do that with 149 other people in there that have their own ideas. But at the same time, I don't have to guess on what my party wants and why they put me in office because I ran on the platform. And so basically, we're going back to the special session now to cover some of the things that weren't taken care of, but like taxpayer funded lobbying. We have a big issue with property taxes in Texas, keeping men out of girls' bathrooms type of thing. And a lot of people would say, oh, that's not happening in Texas. It absolutely is. But we also want to make sure that we are aware, as far as what my bill did, the vaccine bill did, was holding back vaccine manufacturers accountable for their vaccine. And there's a federal law that protects them right now to this day. And so because of that federal protection, we couldn't really just file a state bill, to take care of that.
Yeah,
So
I was
we
going to
said,
ask you about this.
yeah, so we made it to where if a vaccine manufacturer advertises in Texas anywhere on TV, social media, uses an influencer or anything, then they are claiming liability for their vaccine. And vaccines right now are the only product that has no liability for the manufacturer. The only product that I can think of in the nation that actually has that. And it's made them a little bit irresponsible. And so if they want to advertise and say that it's safe, okay, go ahead and do that. But now you're liable in Texas.
So this is HB 3441.
Yes.
And tell me about the process of this. Did you write the bill? I don't know, sometimes other groups write them or whatever, but did somebody come to you with this idea? Was this your idea?
It was actually my idea. My husband and I were sitting at home watching TV, and one of the zillion pharmaceutical commercials came out, where they list all of the things at the end where, like, you could die, you could have a stroke, you could even poop out your lung or whatever, like all of these different things that they say can happen. And then but here, take this, it'll cure your eczema. And I'm like, well,
Right.
no, I'll just keep the eczema, but I was like, it's so crazy that they could just nonchalantly market these things. And I'm like, and you know what? The vaccine, and they don't do it a lot, but if you ever see someone bullying you into taking a vaccine, they don't ever mention all of those things at the end because they're not liable. Right. They don't have to do that. So there's actually a difference between vaccine commercials, advertisements, and pharmaceuticals because of the liability. And so I said, they should have to do that too. And as a matter of fact, if they want to say that it's safe, they should be liable. And so I just took the idea to what we call Ledge Counsel, which is all the attorneys that we have at our disposal in the Texas House, and had them start with, creating the law if you advertise. And then we had to change it a little bit to describe exactly what advertise meant. So TV, radio, using an influencer, any of that we listed actually in the bill. That's the only time that it changed. And we were able to pass it in the House, and it went to the Senate and it passed out of that unchanged, and it went straight to the governor's desk and he signed it.
Now, this might seem like an obvious question to some people, but not obvious to other people. How it is not the case in Texas that every bill has to have a hearing or a vote or anything like that. Mm-hmm. How is it, I guess I'll just say it directly, how is it that your leadership let you have that? Let you have this bill? What was the process to convince them that this could be a bill that wouldn't be buried?
You know what? I was very respectful, even though I didn't agree with a lot of the people there. I maintained my composure and I was extremely respectful. A lot of people even said, "How are you smiling like all the time?" I'm like, "What do you want me to cry?" Like I am relentless when it comes to you, especially if you tell me I can't do something, I'm doing it. And so I just was respectful to people, told them how important this bill is. Representative that was the chair of the committee it needed to go through actually called us and said, "This bill is amazing. It's the only way that we can attack this federal law in a state, in Texas." And so he said, let's do the hearing. And he gave me the hearing. And the Speaker of the House was actually he was like, "I love this bill." And I think he's a trial lawyer. So of course, trial lawyers are going to love this bill. And so you can get buried there if you are disrespectful, a little ornery, or if you're, you don't have to bend the knee and you don't have to be a bootlicker, but you do have to be respectful. And the leadership let me vote my district, which I did that. And as long as I was respectful in the way that I did things, I maintained my own there and was able to fight for all of the morals and the values that I have and I hold dear to my heart.
I think that's a good lesson for new legislators. I was standing in the hall with a newly, sworn in state rep a couple years ago, and she had, I think, been sworn in like 2 days before, right? And a chair of a committee walked by us, and I said hi to him, and I, said his name, and I smiled, and she kind of scowled at him, and I turned to her and I said, "See, that's not helpful.
You're
A
right.
smile doesn't cost you anything."
Mhm.
And I said, and someday you're going to need to go and talk to that person. And guess what? They're probably not going to be interested in going out of their way for you if you weren't nice to them. And it doesn't cost anything to just be
Mhm.
friendly and be nice.
It's not even nice, it's respectful. It's
Yes.
not fake. And like you have to acknowledge that you're the new fish in the sea. And nothing moves without leadership saying it moves. Nothing does.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean, like I said, it's not like I'm bending a knee or doing anything that's
Right.
below me. But you have to, like, in order to get a bill through a committee, you've got to get signatures of everybody on that committee, including Democrats. And then to get it voted out of committee, you need to get all their signatures. And then to even get it on the floor on the calendar, you have to get all of the calendar people's signatures. And that's a mixed group of leadership of both Democrats and Republicans. So if you were just disrespectful for no reason all the time, your stuff is not moving at all.
Yes.
And that's not passing a bill is not the most important thing that you can do because
Right.
I just, I want to make sure that my constituents are taken care of. They have a voice in Austin. But at the same time, if my particular district needed something for my district only, and I was not respectful up in Austin, then my district would suffer. And so I was just able to maintain, um, just minded my P's and Q's, respectful, did and kept my word to other reps. If I told other reps, look, I can't sign on to your bill because it says this and this and this. If you change that, I'll help. I'll vote it out of committee. And they would change their
Mhm.
bills. And so me not even being part of that bill, I was able to make it better legislation just because I said, I'll move it if you just change these two words out of it. And
Mhm.
so, and my name's not on that bill at all, but I was a big part of making that a better law.
Yeah. I'm going to blow your mind here and tell you that in the New Hampshire legislature, every single bill, according to House and Senate rules, must have a hearing. Every single bill must be voted on by the full body. A committee cannot kill a bill or choose to not move it forward. So there isn't a lot of hoops to jump through. If people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. Um, it almost I know that what you just described is more of the legislative process in most states. To me,
Mhm.
that seems so like so many barriers for entry,
Yes.
so many ways that personalities and games could be played. And I'm not saying we don't play any games because of course that's just a reality of politics, but man, that sounds exhausting.
It's totally exhausting. We had over 9,000 bills filed in the session and ended up passing a little over 1,000, I think. But if we had to hear 9,000 bills, in the way that the timing is structured to be able to speak on a
9,000.
bill, there's some bills that we were talking about on the House floor, one single bill for over 12 hours for one bill. And so,
So when you got to do them all, they don't file that many. And actually, I'm going to bring that up because sometimes people complain that there's too many bills, and we should put like roadblocks in the way of how many bills like a legislator can submit, which I have always fought against because I don't think that there should be arbitrary like markers like that. But
mhm,
we usually have about 1,000. And that's for 424 legislators. We have a
wow.
huge legislative body, and it's usually about 1,000 are submitted. So that's nuts. And we don't really have any omnibuses. Besides the budget, there's no omnibuses.
Right.
Well, that's very interesting. I love to hear about other legislative processes. So let's go back to the bill because I am still not totally understanding how it is that the supremacy clause does not apply in this case with, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act and the PrEP Act.
Well, we're definitely, this is not going to stop in Texas. I see it going to the Supreme Court. It's just starting here, and we're going to get challenged on that.
Yeah.
But just getting our foot in the door
Yeah.
To challenge them is a major step.
Mhm.
And us passing that in Texas, and we're not a small state. So that's, this affects 31 million
Yeah.
people. It's a huge step. And now, like I was talking to you before we started airing, there's other states contacting us saying, can we file your bill? I'm like, please do. The more the merrier. And we also have JFK Jr. in office right now that wants to kill all of the pharmaceutical commercials. But I still want to pass that in Texas because we don't know who's going to be in Washington, D.C. next and if that'll go away. But we can't
100%.
control what's happening in Texas. So I definitely am going to file that next session to get rid of all pharmaceutical commercials because you shouldn't be advertising those. If there's something wrong with you, you go to your doctor and then they can tell you about your options, but you should not be shopping for that on commercials. And right now they're just making billions of dollars and people thinking that they have problems when they haven't even been to their doctor.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And, you know, obviously we do have a judicial supremacy issue in the country in general. But one thing I do like about this idea of maybe having a whole block of states sort of move forward with similar legislation, you know, whether you like marijuana legalization or not, and I'm not here to comment on it, the reality is that legalizing marijuana does violate federal law. Okay. And
Mhm.
what states did, though, was that they said, listen, we're just not going to enforce. The feds could enforce potentially. And actually, at the beginning, I believe there were some raids in some of the first states that, quote, legalized marijuana. But eventually, when you had enough states moving together, when you had enough force, there couldn't be enforcement, right? And, I thought I had a similar bill that I worked on back in 2021. Sorry, I don't know. No, 22. And it was right after the Biden vaccine mandates came down. And we had a bill that went through that was a nullification bill saying the state of New Hampshire will never enforce any federal vaccine mandate. And I mean, it's true that potentially, like, the feds could have come in and enforced it themselves. They didn't, but they could
Mhm.
have, right?
Yeah. It would be
Um,
very difficult not using local law enforcement to do that. It would be almost impossible.
Exactly. And so I was sort of hoping other states would join us and do the same thing. I don't think any other state ever did join us and do the same thing. And eventually, obviously, the mandates were struck down and it sort of became a moot point, but at least for the time being.
Mhm.
But I think that that's a really good point. You get enough people kind of moving and doing the same things. We're not as much as, you're a lawmaker. We are not really a nation of laws. We're really a nation of political will. And
Right.
sometimes you can create a movement around something and create political will towards an issue. And my other point is, I do wonder if you get enough states doing this, does it put pressure on the federal government to finally really change these laws? You brought up RFK. I don't know. I don't think RFK, as HHS secretary, has the authority to
Mhm.
really nullify the parts of the PrEP Act and the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act
Mhm.
that create that, wall of from liability. And but can we pressure Congress? I've seen no moves out of Congress. I don't know if you have. Actually, that's a good question for you. Have you spoken to your federal delegation about the issue of vaccine liability?
We have not spoken yet. We will soon, but I mean, we just got out of the session, so he's busy and I'm busy, but we are going to talk about it for sure. Um, but I do think that I mean, our attorney general right now is already battling in the courts pharmaceutical liability in the courts right now, and we can't talk a lot about right now because it's ongoing. But he says that it's very similar. And it's just something that's going to have to go to the Supreme Court and let them decide whether or not it's constitutional or not for them to be
Mhm.
not liable for their. And then not just that, the vaccine schedule for children used to be. I mean, for me, when I was younger, there was like 12 total shots that I was supposed to get or
Mhm.
suggested.
Mhm.
Now it's over 84 shots. Um, for a child up to 18 years old. And it's just, how am I still alive if I only got 12? I mean, if I'm going to die without all of these vaccines. But they're recommending that, pregnant women get a COVID vaccine and babies and all of this stuff. And I've never gotten the COVID vaccine. I've never gotten that. But I honestly don't know if I would have questioned it before the COVID shutdowns. I think I would have been one of those people that just said, "Oh, they said we need this. I'll probably just get it." I honestly, and I didn't know what my rights were as a citizen to say, "Oh, wait, this is my body." And it's funny that I'm saying it now, but most people just think, "Oh, the doctors know best. We better just go do that." And I think the COVID shutdowns were actually a blessing. They told people that you have rights, and you don't have, the government does not control us, basically. And you don't have to listen to that doctor. Go get another opinion or have your own opinion of what's best for you and your family. And honestly, I think COVID was an absolute blessing for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Woke me up a lot more than I was before. And I think it really, I almost think they overplayed their hand a little bit, right? And especially like the medical establishment really did. The health
Mhm.
bureaucrats 100% did. There
Mhm.
never would have been momentum in any state legislature for legislation like this before
Right,
COVID, ever.
right.
You brought up the childhood schedule. Do you know what the mandates are in Texas as far as school attendance? Is it the full ASIP schedule, or is it a more limited schedule, or
I think it's the full schedule, and I could be wrong. It's the full schedule unless you have a written um,
a religious
like
or
an exemption, like
yep,
religious exemption or like some sort of waiver.
yes.
You can't just do it, but the school has to have that on record because if there is an outbreak, then those kids that are not vaccinated will be told they need to stay home out of precaution or whatever. But you don't have to have your full vaccines in school now. There is a waiver that's available.
Right. Yes, I do know that. Yeah, there are religious exemptions in Texas and medical exemptions. Um, have you considered or put any thought into? I'm always trying to rack people's brains or pick people's brains about medical freedom legislation. Obviously, Idaho just passed a huge medical freedom bill. I'm truly shocked. Actually, it got signed, but it did, and it eliminates all of the school mandates. It makes them into suggestions. Any is there any kind of thought or conversation going on in Texas where we are considering attempting that here in New Hampshire next year? Do you have anything like that in the pipeline there with the school schedule?
Well, what's crazy is I would have never thought about this before COVID,
Yeah.
because, like, honestly, and this is embarrassing, I got both of my daughters were completely vaccinated because that's what you're supposed to do, and thankfully they're okay.
Mhm.
But there's a group called Texans for Vaccine Choice. They actually named me Representative of the Year, which I was super shocked as a freshman to get that. But my statement is now when everybody's like, "Do you have this vaccine?" It's like none of your business.
Mhm.
It's my body. These are my kids' bodies. We don't have to report to a government agency what we've done at all.
Yes.
So yes, I'm totally on board with making that a freedom that you don't have to even fill out a form at all.
Yeah. I know, I agree. Somebody in the comments here, and they're absolutely correct. There are actually a lot of countries, a lot of first world countries, about half of Europe. They have no vaccine mandates whatsoever. They have a government recommended schedule. And my argument is that we truly did lose for good reason. We all lost faith in the health bureaucrats.
Mhm.
And I think that they could go a long way in regaining some of that trust if they understood that their role is not to force and coerce, that their role is to educate and convince.
Mhm.
Convince me this is a good idea, because
Or
good
not.
ideas don't require force.
That's exactly it. My bill is more about transparency.
Yes.
I think that if these vaccine manufacturers were more transparent,
Mhm.
I think more people would actually be willing to get the vaccine because, like, when I
Exactly.
had to get brain surgery a couple of years ago, they told my husband, like, she could die from this, but he took it upon himself to say, well, she needs this. This outweighs, the reaction that she might have.
Right.
And so, but it's up to the family to know exactly the good and the bad.
Yep. And
And
you
then
can
let us
have
make
real
sure.
transparency if there is not liability.
Exactly. And if they don't want to advertise their vaccine because they're not willing to back it, then that should tell you something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I will be watching to see where this bill goes, where this law heads, and what the courts end up ruling. And maybe we'll be giving it a shot in New Hampshire, and I'll let you know how that goes also.
Yeah, definitely. Have anybody give me a call, and they're definitely, they can use our legislation because it got through the House and the Senate, and that's 181 people in a legislature. It's pretty amazing. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations. Successful first year. What do you have on the docket for? Oh, you guys don't have year two. That's right. You only have special sessions, possibly year
Well,
two.
not
All right.
possibly. We have one coming up. We had those horrible floods that happened in Texas
Yeah.
that we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can there, but we've got property tax reform and some other special legislation on the books for
Good.
that. But yeah, we run every 2 years, and so after we're out of session, it's basically campaigning to win your spot back.
Gotcha. Well, good luck. I'll be
Thank you.
watching. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. How can people find you?
You could go to my website, shellyluther.com.
Okay. Have a great night.
Thank you.
That is it for the Liberty Lobbyist. You can find me at Melissa Blasek NH or at Rebuild NH. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email me director@rebuildnh.com. Until next time.